They say the worst part of betrayal is that it never comes from your enemies. It comes from the people you trust the most, the ones you share your bed with, the ones you build your entire future around. My name is Mark. I'm 34 years old, and for 7 years, I was married to a woman I believed was my soulmate. Sarah was 32, a successful marketing director, vibrant, intelligent, and supposedly deeply in love with me. We had the quintessential suburban dream: a beautiful house, steady careers, a golden retriever, and talks about starting a family by the end of the year. To the outside world, and to me, we were impenetrable. Looking back, the signs were there. They always are, aren't they? But when you love someone, your brain acts like a filter. It rationalizes the late nights at the office. It excuses the sudden changes in her phone habits. She's just stressed with the new quarter, I'd tell myself when she started taking her phone into the bathroom. She's networking, I'd think, when she smelled faintly of expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine after a client dinner. I was a fool, a trusting, loyal fool. But the thing about being an analytical person, I'm a senior data analyst, is that once the data doesn't add up, you can't ignore it. And my awakening didn't come from a dramatic confrontation. It came from something entirely mundane: a piece of plastic, a micro SD card.
It was a Tuesday evening in late October. Sarah's car had been in the shop for transmission issues, so she had borrowed my SUV for the last 3 days. I worked from home, so I didn't mind. When I finally got back into my car to run to the hardware store, I noticed the dash cam hanging slightly crooked. I reached up to fix it, and my thumb brushed the memory card slot. Now, I am not a snooping husband. I had never once checked her phone or her emails, but for some reason, a little voice in the back of my head, call it intuition, call it a guardian angel, whispered, "Check it." I pulled the SD card, took it inside, and plugged it into my laptop. I just wanted to see her driving, maybe catch her singing along to the radio, something cute. Instead, I found a 45-minute audio recording that would systematically dismantle my entire life. The camera points forward, so there was no video of the interior, but the cabin microphone is crystal clear. The file was timestamped from Friday afternoon. I clicked play. First, just the sound of the engine. Then, her voice, giggling, a sound she hadn't made with me in months. Then, a man's voice, deep, arrogant. "You sure he doesn't suspect anything?" the man asked. "Mark, God, no," Sarah's voice replied, dripping with a condescension that made my blood run cold. "He's clueless. He's so wrapped up in his spreadsheets. Besides, he thinks I'm at the regional conference." My stomach didn't just drop, it completely fell out of my body. A wave of nausea hit me so hard, I had to put my head between my knees to keep from vomiting on my keyboard. I sat there, paralyzed, as I listened to my wife, the woman I was planning to have children with, describe in graphic, sickening detail what they were going to do at the hotel. And worse, they made fun of me. They laughed at my hobbies, at my trusting nature. The man was David, the vice president of sales at her company, a married man with 3 kids. I had met him at the company Christmas party. We had drank beers together. He had shaken my hand. I listened to the whole 45 minutes, every wet sound, every cruel joke. I wanted to smash the laptop. I wanted to grab a baseball bat and drive to her office. The rage inside me was a physical fire burning my chest. But then, an icy, unnatural calm washed over me. Crying and screaming wouldn't fix this. Confronting her now would just let her control the narrative. She would cry, she would gaslight, she would hide her assets. No, I was a data analyst. I deal with facts, timelines, and execution. If she wanted to play games, I was going to change the rules. For the next 2 months, I lived a double life. It was the hardest psychological test I have ever endured. When Sarah came home that night, I kissed her on the forehead. I asked her how her day was. I smiled while she lied straight to my face. Inside, I was screaming, but on the outside, I was the perfect, oblivious husband. Every night, while she slept soundly beside me, often after texting him under the covers, I was at work. I hired a private investigator. I told him I needed everything. I didn't just want proof of the affair. I wanted proof of where the money was going. You see, we lived in an at-fault state regarding divorce, meaning infidelity could significantly impact alimony and asset division. But more importantly, I was looking for something called dissipation of marital assets. If I could prove she was spending our joint money on her affair, I could get it all back in court. The PI, a gruff ex-cop named Mike, was worth every penny. Within 3 weeks, he handed me a 60-page dossier. It had high-resolution photos of them entering and leaving cheap motels, fancy hotels, and expensive restaurants. But the gold mine was the financial trail. She had been taking cash back on grocery runs for months to pay for hotel rooms without leaving a credit card trace. She had bought him a $2,000 Tag Heuer watch for his birthday from our joint savings, claiming she had moved the money to a high-yield investment account. I took everything to the most ruthless, aggressive divorce attorney in the city, a woman named Claire, who looked at the dossier, smiled a terrifying smile, and said, "We are going to take her to the cleaners." Under Claire's guidance, I quietly separated my finances. I redirected my direct deposits to a new single account at a different bank. I ran credit checks to ensure she hadn't opened any secret cards in my name. I gathered every single tax document, mortgage statement, and retirement account file, storing them in a secure cloud drive and a physical safety deposit box. I was building an airtight cage around her, and she had no idea she was already locked inside.
The hardest part was surviving Thanksgiving and Christmas, sitting across from her parents, who I genuinely loved, carving the turkey, raising a glass to family. Sarah gave a toast at Thanksgiving about how grateful she was for my support. She actually teared up. I looked at her, holding my glass, and realized I was looking at a stranger. A sociopath who could cry on command while stabbing me in the back. During Christmas, she gifted me a custom-made leather wallet. I smiled, kissed her cheek, and thanked her. Inside, I knew I had already paid the retainer to divorce her with the very money she had stolen from us. David, the affair partner, was getting sloppy. The PI reported they were getting bolder, meeting up in parking lots in broad daylight. They thought they were invincible. David's wife, Emily, was a stay-at-home mom raising their 3 young children. She was heavily involved in their church community. I felt a deep, profound sorrow for her. She didn't deserve this any more than I did. By mid-January, my lawyer gave me the green light. The financial traps were set. The paperwork was drafted. It was time to pull the trigger. But I didn't want to just serve her papers at home. That was too private, too easy for her to spin. She had disrespected me in the worst way possible. The consequences needed to be public, undeniable, and permanent. I chose February 14th, Valentine's Day.
Sarah had told me she had to work late on Valentine's Day to finalize a massive Q1 campaign. A classic excuse. The PI confirmed she actually had reservations at a high-end French restaurant across town with David, followed by a booked suite at a boutique hotel. I texted her that morning. "Happy Valentine's Day, honey. So sorry you have to work late. I'll leave a surprise for you at home." She replied, "Love you so much. Wish I could be there. You're the best." At exactly 2 p.m.,
My plan went into synchronized motion. It was like a military operation. Phase 1, the couriers. I had prepared 3 thick, legal-sized envelopes. Inside each was a carefully curated package: the divorce papers, printed screenshots of their most graphic text messages, the receipts for the hotel rooms and the stolen money, and a USB drive containing the dashcam audio and the PI's photo dossier. Courier number 1 arrived at Sarah's office building at 2:15 p.m. He was instructed to deliver it directly to the CEO's desk. Why? Because David and Sarah were breaking a strict company fraternization policy, especially since David was an executive and she was a director. I included a polite letter to the CEO explaining that company funds might have been used for their excursions, knowing it would trigger an immediate HR audit. Courier number 2 arrived at Sarah's parents' house. I loved them, but I knew Sarah would immediately run to them and lie, claiming I was abusive or crazy. The evidence spoke for itself. Phase 2, the wife. At 2:30 p.m., I parked 2 blocks away from David's house. I walked up to the door and rang the bell. Emily, David's wife, answered. She had a toddler on her hip and looked exhausted. My heart broke for her, but she needed to know. I introduced myself. I handed her a heavy envelope. I simply said, "My wife is Sarah. Your husband is David. I am so sorry, Emily. Don't let him lie to you." I turned and walked away before she could even open it. I knew the explosion that was about to happen in that house. Phase 3, the confrontation. At 5:30 p.m., Sarah and David were sitting in the corner booth of the French restaurant, sipping champagne. I walked in. I was wearing my best suit. I felt a strange, floating sensation, like I was watching myself in a movie. I walked right up to their table. David saw me first, and the blood literally drained from his face. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Sarah turned, a confused, annoyed look on her face that instantly morphed into sheer, unadulterated terror. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I placed a large, red envelope on Sarah's plate, right on top of her salad. "Happy Valentine's Day, Sarah," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but loud enough for David to hear. "I know everything. I've known for 4 months. By the time you get back to the office, HR will have the file. By the time you call your parents, they will have heard the dashcam audio. And David," I looked at the pathetic man shrinking into the booth, "Emily has the photos. Good luck with the custody battle." Sarah tried to grab my arm. "Mark, wait, please, let's talk." I pulled away like she was diseased. "My lawyer's name is Claire. You will only communicate through her. All your access to the joint accounts has been frozen. Pack your bags tonight. I want you out of my house by tomorrow morning, or I'll have you removed." I turned and walked out of the restaurant. As the doors closed behind me, I could hear Sarah starting to hyperventilate and David swearing under his breath. The crisp winter air hit my face, and for the first time in 4 months, I took a full, deep breath.
The fallout was biblical. By 9 a.m. the next day, Sarah and David were both called into HR. Because David had expensed 2 of their client lunches to the company card, he was fired on the spot for gross misconduct. Sarah was suspended and eventually let go 3 weeks later because she became a massive liability to the firm. David, being the coward he is, instantly threw Sarah under the bus. He begged his wife for forgiveness, claiming Sarah had aggressively pursued him. Emily didn't buy it. She filed for divorce within the week and used the mountain of evidence I provided to secure primary custody and a massive chunk of his assets. Sarah's family was horrified. Her father, an old-school, principled man, called me in tears, apologizing for raising a daughter capable of such deceit. When Sarah tried to run to them for shelter and financial support, they told her she had made her bed and needed to lie in it. The divorce proceedings were a slaughter. Because I had definitive proof of her dissipating marital assets, the judge ruled heavily in my favor. I kept the house. I kept my entire retirement account. She was ordered to repay the money she had siphoned from our joint savings, which left her virtually bankrupt. She had to move into a tiny 1-bedroom apartment on the bad side of town, scraping by on freelance marketing gigs since her reputation in the corporate sector was ruined. She tried to call me dozens of times. She left voicemails crying, begging, saying it was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I never answered. I saved them all and forwarded them to my lawyer. It's been 2 years now. The house is quiet, but it's a good quiet. I sold it last year and moved closer to the city. I adopted a second dog. I've started dating again, taking it slow. The betrayal left a scar, a deep one that still aches when it rains. But the scar is a reminder.
People ask me sometimes if I regret being so harsh, if I should have just walked away quietly. I tell them absolutely not. When someone burns down your house, you don't politely sweep up the ashes. You make sure they pay for the match, the gasoline, and the damages. I didn't destroy Sarah's life. I just handed her the bill for her own choices, and she couldn't afford it.